The Football Kickoff.
With Sky. Watch every single live Premier League game on Sky Sports, BT Sport and Premier Sports.
All right, it is that part of the week where we whet your appetite suitably for the feast of football coming to your television over the course of the weekend. The 5 games we're focusing on today: Leicester against Arsenal at 3 o'clock on Premier Sport tomorrow. Bournemouth versus Manchester City at 5:30. Under lights, a little bit tricky for Man City after a little bit of a wobble. We've got Crystal Palace versus Liverpool at 7:45. Also a big game. Some ghosts of seasons past for Liverpool on that one. On Sunday, Spurs versus Chelsea at 1:30 is live on telly on Sky Sports. It's also live and off the ball on News Talk with Stephen Doyle and Brian Kerr on duty for that one. And that's a huge game for both sides. And then Manchester United against Newcastle in the Cup final at 4:30 on Sky Sports. The football kick-off with Sky, all the football you love in one place across Sky Sports, BT Sports and Premier Sports. I'm delighted to say Colm Boohig is in the studio. Colm, how are you?
Ger, hello, how are you?
He's ebullient today after the comeback from Manchester United last night ahead of the Cup final. And Keith Treacy. Keith, how are you?
Very well, lads. How are you?
Yeah, you're pretty excited about how things are going for Arsenal at the moment. Just as it looked like they were getting into significant trouble, they have a massive come-from-behind victory with a bit of fortune at the end. And then, even better than that, Manchester City. Well, something's going wrong there. So Arsenal fans are feeling themselves, right?
Yeah, look, we all expected Arsenal to have a little bit of a wobble. It's even hard to call it a wobble, to be honest with you, because they lost against an Everton team that had a new manager in Sean Dyche. They're always tricky fixtures. There's always this new manager bound. So we can understand that one. The Brentford draw, Ivan Toney's offside. So you can understand there's a realm where Arsenal win that game there. And they lost to City twice. It's very, very hard to call that a wobble when you're losing to City and drawing to Brentford. And I understand the Everton one. So I'm sure Mikel Arteta is in there saying this to the lads that we've been outstanding this season. We've lost a couple of games and there's a bit of doom and gloom around the place, but that's a sign of how far Arsenal have come. And the things I'm hearing now is that Saka's signing a new deal. He's going to go up to 200 grand a week. And now people are saying, I wasn't sure about Jorginho coming in. I know he's a good player. I find him a bit one-paced at times, but he scored that goal and all of a sudden I've accepted him. Arsenal fans seem to have accepted him in general. And now they're saying, Partey's fit. I'm hearing Partey's going to be fit for the weekend, and people are saying, will we keep Jorginho in because he scored that goal? Will we bring Partey out? And these are not problems I've seen happening, because Arsenal's midfield with Partey has been absolutely outstanding. But for Jorginho's name to be getting thrown around for maybe coming in, it's just a sign of how good the competition is at the club in the midfield in particular. Yeah, I think all Arsenal fans are over the moon, but Leicester, they seem to have turned a corner. They won 2 games on the bounce, and then United put them to the sword the other day. So yeah, there's an awful lot of things. Only Southampton have picked up less points at home than Leicester this season. So everything is pointing to an Arsenal win, which is usually when Arsenal slip up. So I just hope that that is what's about to happen.
Are Arsenal going to win the league straight into the deep end?
Sorry, say again?
Are Arsenal going to win the league?
Look, to be honest with you, I think that's largely down to Manchester City. I think we're sitting here, Arsenal have been absolutely outstanding, they've been brilliant, but they're playing above themselves, is the general consensus right now. Manchester City are probably in second, third gear at the minute, and we're all sitting back thinking if they hit top gear, they can just go on. They could go on beaten for the rest of the season. I don't think people are expecting Arsenal to do that. We're expecting Arsenal to drop a couple of points here and there. If City hit the heights that they can, if Erling Haaland just starts banging in the goals again, then I expect City, I have to be honest, I expect City to find another gear and overtake Arsenal at some point in the season. But look, like I said, I keep going back to it. At the start of the season, I want the Champions League football. It looks like we've more than secured that already. So the squad looks like it's in a great place at the minute, and the competition is brilliant. So if we win the Premier League this season, massive bonus. But look, I'm already looking at next season as a fan and thinking, yeah, I'm licking my lips thinking I think we can actually compete over 38 games. If we do it this season, it's not what I expected, but, all praise to Mikel Arteta, and some of the signings he's made have been outstanding.
Recent history would show you that when you get the opportunity, you have to absolutely go for it, because we saw Spurs get close twice and they just never got over the line, and things kind of didn't fall apart totally. They're still obviously perpetual Champions League contenders, but when you have the chance to win the league, you've just got to take, if it's a slight little gap in City's form, because we don't know what's going to happen with City. Like, City might get away with all of the stuff and the financial shenanigans. There's a like that's definitely within the realm of possibility that some technicality is found by the most expensive lawyer in world history, and they get off. That's totally possible. At which point you're like, well, Pep is staying. They're going to invest loads more money. They've got a bunch of kids coming through who are really good, and they can sell a lot of players for loads more money. And and maybe they work out how to play Erling Haaland. So this might just be the window to get in there and keep winning.
Yeah, look, it's a lot easier said than done. I just feel that, like I said, I feel like Arsenal they're at the tipping point right now. I think Xhaka in the middle, I think he needs a rest. He's had his fixture list over the last year and a half, 18 months has been huge. Partey is obviously, he's been injured, he's coming back in. Odegaard, Saka's been kicked up and down the pitch. I just feel like if you take Saka out there, if you take Martinelli out there, even an Odegaard, I think Arsenal started to become a little bit weaker. And I know they're already missing Jesus as well. So I just feel there's a lot of different avenues for Manchester City to be able to catch Arsenal. I would love Arsenal to find the gear. I'd just be able to keep the pace. But look, I'm just sitting back, and I think it's just due to the amount of respect I have for Manchester City and what they have done. And let's not forget that last season Arsenal went to Spurs in the North London derby and they got beat, and their season just capitulated after that. So
yeah,
that's fresh in my mind. And Manchester City can go and lose a game, but they won't compound it with another one and another one. Whereas Arsenal have shown that well, they can do that at times.
Keith, you ran through the midfield options there for Arsenal, and they're very impressive. But one player that I'm very interested in his kind of evolution, it's kind of stalled a bit, is Emile Smith-Rowe. Now, he's been pestered with injury, but you look back to the very start of last season. Do you remember that game away to Brentford where Brentford won 2-0 in their first Premier League game? And Smith-Rowe was the one positive coming out of that game, and he was excellent for certainly the first half of last season for Arsenal. He's now pretty much switched roles completely with the rest of the squad, who are all firing on all cylinders, albeit his injury has stalled his progression. But does he have a future at the club for you, because he's such a talent?
It's hard to tell, because since his injury I haven't seen an awful lot of him. So it's hard to tell if he's come back the same player. Does he still have the fire in his belly that he was showing? And when a young player gets a serious injury like that, sometimes they shy away from dribbling like they had been doing, and dribbling and ball carrying was a big part of Emile Smith-Rowe's game. And I think the best thing from an Arsenal point of view is that when Smith-Rowe got into the team, I think it opened the door to the Bukayo Saka. They started realising that, well, if I start doing things properly, this manager will put me in. And it wasn't always like that at Arsenal. And look at we're obviously seeing reaping the rewards with Martinelli as well, some of the younger players. But in terms of Emile Smith-Rowe coming back in, and look, he definitely has the talent to be an Arsenal player, but at the minute, it's very, very hard to make a case for him to come back into the team or be playing. He just needs to. He got injured at a very, very bad time. When you get injured as a player, you're sort of thinking, I hope the team don't kick on without me, because you're thinking I'll be left behind. And that's exactly what happened to Emile Smith-Rowe. He got injured at a very, very bad time, and the team has just gone from strength to strength to strength without him. And it's very hard to see a way back from with how strong Arsenal are at the minute.
You mentioned Leicester there, Keith. They're a funny outside, aren't they? They've had two brilliant comeback wins recently against Tottenham and Aston Villa, excellent. But then you have last weekend against Manchester United, very comfortable 3-0 defeat. James Maddison, who captained Leicester that day, said afterwards they completely knocked the stuffing out of us, and Rashford scored that first goal. Well, does Brendan Rodgers have any
I watched the first
more left to give?
15-20 minutes of that, and De Gea made two genuinely world-class saves, and there was one brilliant save and one good chance missed. And you're thinking, Iheanacho the previous 2 weeks had shown a bit of form and might actually have stuck one of those in. So it would have been really interesting to see, because I still think there's a bit of a flakiness in Man United if you just, but it's too late now. I think their confidence has turned to a point where they're recovering that. It would have been just interesting to see in the Premier League what would have happened.
There's a flakiness in pretty much every side in the Premier League if you get at them, but Leicester, I think that's actually, flakiness is exactly the word for them, because no side has lost more points in winning positions than Leicester this season, 19 points in total, Keith. I really did think strongly that at the end of last season that Brendan Rodgers could take this side no further. Now that we're a fair bit into the season and they're so up and down, do you think that Rodgers himself will stay at Leicester beyond this season and also improve them, more to the point?
No, I don't think, looking at it from the outside in, when you're listening to Brendan Rodgers, he's saying stuff, he's not exactly talking down about the club, but it's almost like he's defending the club at times. Yeah. Look, when you look at James Maddison, he's come out in the press recently and said, listen, I won't be begging him to stay. So that for me means Maddison wants out. And he's been heavily linked with Newcastle. I'm sure some of the bigger boys as well might be interested in him. Tielemans, there's links with him and Arsenal. I'm sure there'll be a lot of suitors for him as well. So I think that squad could be picked at over the summer, and I think Brendan Rodgers will already be annoyed with what's going on in the background, not having too many funds available.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think there's a lot of red flags, and Maddison is getting a lot better as the season goes on. He's up to 9 goals now, and that's sort of papering over some of the cracks that are at Leicester at the minute. Like, you look at Wout Fass at the back and Harry Suter, that's a centre-half pairing that I don't think anybody has a lot of confidence in yet. Like, they conceded 41 goals in 23 Premier League games. And I think they've lost 13 or 14 Premier League games already. That's a massive amount of games to be just getting rolled over in. And that creeps in. We all know about the winning way, the winning mentality, but you can get used to losing as well. And when they won the 2 games, I thought, here we go, Leicester will kick on, and then United just put them away. So, and I know United are a different animal at the minute, but yeah, I take your point. Leicester had 1 or 2 chances in the game, but it's a 90-minute game.
Yeah,
they're not competing for 90 minutes, and I'm just not seeing enough from them. I think Brendan Rodgers will have a look at this and say, look at it this way. If you were to offer Brendan Rodgers 13th or 14th now, I think that's sitting in 14th. I think he'd rip your hand off and say, yeah, end the season, we'll finish 14th.
Let me ask you this then. Is there any club who's going to be coming in to offer Brendan Rodgers a job in the summer, and what are the clubs at what level, and who would he say yes to?
Well, it's hard to tell, isn't it? You never know who's really interested in who until somebody loses the manager. I'm not too sure, but I do think on the whole he's done well. His time at Liverpool, people will go back to his time at Liverpool. People, for some reason, not me, are quite quick to dismiss how well he did at Celtics. It doesn't really count up there, but you have to remember how well he did with that Liverpool squad, and he was overachieving for a long, long time with them. So,
well, if Steven Gerrard had not slipped, they would have won the league that year. And then, he's an all-time legendary manager.
There was other moments. I mean, that was the defining moment. But, there was a little bit. It was sliding doors moments. I mean, if he doesn't slip and he controls Saka's pass, they can make a mistake 5 minutes later. I think they were defensively massively frail that season, but he got them, like Keith said, he definitely had them outperforming themselves. Luis Suarez is a big part of it, but still.
So the potential jobs that are available at the end of this season, the start of next year, we're looking at maybe the West Hams of the world, maybe a Spurs job. Is he in the market? Is he at that level?
I don't think the Spurs fans would take to him, just because, look, he would play a better brand of football than Antonio Conte right now. But what Antonio Conte is doing is he's getting results, and although Spurs are not pretty on the eye, they're getting things done. And Brendan Rodgers might be pretty on the eye, but it would take time to bed in. You would have to get the fans on side, you would have to get players on side to play that way. And I just don't think it would be a match. But I think the West Ham one, you say somebody like a West Ham if David Moyes was to go out there, yeah, maybe the West Ham one, because I think West Ham have aligned what they expect at the minute, and where they are this season. I think David Moyes would be able to improve on that himself. But if he was to go out for whatever reason, yeah, I can see Brendan Rodgers maybe going in there and improving a couple of players at West Ham. I think that could be in and around his level, yeah.
Brendan Rodgers might be pretty on the eye. Brendan Rodgers would love that line.
Hey.
He would love that line.
Well, all that work, all that dental work,
Yeah, I really do think he should have left Leicester by now. That's the feeling with him. I feel like he's done all he can with them.
Yeah,
I think he might be thinking the same as well right now.
That's why I brought it up. Definitely, the point about Maddison and Tielemans, he put together a great squad, and I'm sure there was a lot of people who were bringing the advice of who you should sign, and they will all be picked off. The bit where it was a Champions League qualifying squad,
they won the FA Cup,
has gone. Yeah. And I think he deserves a chance at a big club. I'd love to see him somewhere like Spurs. I actually think he's kind of perfect for Spurs. Good quality football, very ambitious, so chocolate that it would go down really well with the London media. It's a match made in heaven.
Yeah, I don't know.
Not convinced.
The Spurs fans are a little bit etchy at the minute. Half the time, they're drawing that 0-0, not playing very well. Antonio Conte's team, and they're getting booed off sometimes, and it's literally just the style of play. So I think if Brendan Rodgers was to go in there and say total football, and the results start to go a little bit iffy, I wouldn't see it ending well. Although he could go in there and totally totally do really, really well. But just for my eye, I don't think it would be a match for me.
Okay, well, let's talk about the cup final. Manchester United against Newcastle. The Manchester United fans are feeling a little bit kind of edgy because if they lose this now, it's going to be a bit of a disaster. Whereas when they qualified for it, they were like, oh, it's a cup final, it doesn't really matter. But now it's like, oh, we're playing so well that if Newcastle, who haven't won a cup since black and white TV, were to beat, oh no, what does this mean for us, Colm? What does it mean?
No, it's not.
How edgy are you? Tickets are £1,000 a pop, by the way. What the hell? It's a Carabao Cup final. Come on, Colm.
Jesus.
No, I mean, it's not a disaster in any way if Manchester United lose this. Not at all. They're the only side in England who are competing at all for fronts, really. And the Barcelona game, they're on a high here. I think unless there's a terrible performance waiting on Sunday against Newcastle United, I think the fans will put it down to a freak incident if they lose this final. There's such good vibes and will towards Erik ten Hag and what he's doing at the club that he's bought himself a lot of time and space to do what he wants. Like Newcastle haven't been great recently. They're not coming into this cup final in great form. Almiron's slipped off his very high standards from the start of the season. They're not scoring at will. They're not winning games convincingly. Watch what will happen now on Sunday. They'll win 2-1 Newcastle.
You don't honestly think that, though?
I think they have a very good chance of winning. Yeah, I mean, like I actually was thinking, Keith, ahead of this, like what team does Erik ten Hag play on Sunday after last night's brilliant match, very intense, took a lot of energy out of them? Does he go with essentially the same 11, or does he make one or two choices? What's or changes? What is he thinking there?
I think he has to go as strong as he can. Where they are now, they're in a cup final, so you've got to go and win it. It's the rest of the games will look after themselves. The big one for me, obviously, Rashford come off last night. We're not sure if he's going to be fit. He's obviously integral. So if Rashford is fit, do you even play him? Are you still looking at the European competitions? Are you still fighting in the league? Because they're not mathematically out of the league either. Although none of us are saying we believe they can win it, they're not out of that either. So Erik ten Hag might have a couple of different things up his sleeve for that, but I would maybe go with Garnacho. I didn't think Sancho was good last night.
No, he was very poor. Yeah.
Koundé's header, David De Gea made a great save, and that was at 1-1. If that goes into the back of the net, you're expecting Barcelona with how well they could keep the ball in the game management. Sancho just lets him run off the back of him. It was a winger in a left back's position. He just did not defend it in any way, shape, or form, and David De Gea digged him out of a hole. So I would probably go with Garnacho, and he would be up against Kieran Trippier. Kieran Trippier is a brilliant footballer going forward. It can be got at 1v1. Got an awful lot better at that, but can be got at. So that would be a brilliant matchup for me. And then the Shaw and Almiron on the other side, in the middle, Casemiro and Fred, the two Brazilian boys. I think they've been excellent, and they'll be going up against Joe Linton and Bruno Guimaraes, them two Brazilian boys. So I think there will be a little bit of needle in this as well. And I see it going either one or two ways. I think United can turn up in the first 20 minutes. They can win the game. Maybe Newcastle come out and freeze a little bit. I know they have players that are used to big international games, big Premier League games, but the fans will feel this. The fans are making their way down to Wembley. There'll be an air of excitement in the air, but there will be an edginess in the air because the Newcastle fans won't be used to this. The United fans will be. The United fans will be expectant. The Newcastle fans, I just hope that doesn't creep in, that the little bit of nerviness that may be in the air. So I just hope Newcastle don't freeze. And if they don't freeze, look, I'm with Colm. I think this could be a great game. And I would not be surprised one bit if Newcastle win it. I actually think it could go all the way. I think it'll be really, really tight. Penalties.
It's their first final this century, Newcastle. The last final in 1999 against
Man United.
Yeah, the Roy Keane game where he went off injured and didn't play in the Champions final.
4-0?
2-0, yeah. 2-0. Teddy Sheringham, Paul Scholes, I think. That was the last time.
Was it? Newcastle didn't qualify for anything else when Ger was there, no?
No, there was no final anyway. Definitely no showpiece. And it was consecutive finals back then. But like Keith, you'd go, surely the front three for United would be Garnacho, Anthony and Rashford, wouldn't it? With Weghorst and Sancho out.
You're been making this case all day. You were making this case on OTB AM this morning as well, and Daniel Harris wasn't having it. You keep the bench strong so that you've got something to change and run the team ragged.
That's how I put it to Daniel, but I was wondering Keith's taking it, what he'd go with.
Yeah, look, I definitely go Rashford. I think we all agree that if Rashford's fit, obviously Erik ten Hag will have a word in his ears as to what's the percentage, put a percentage on your fitness. If he's anything over 60-70%, he's in. He has to be, and he has to start, because I know coming off the bench, I never liked it as a player. If you're given the option, would you like to start, or you like to come on and affect the game? everybody wants to start. I think that'll be Rashford's thinking as well. I'd go with Garnacho. I think he showed an awful lot more than Sancho. I really like watching how direct he is. And Sancho seems like somebody who can get caught up in a it's took him a while to find his feet at United. He seems to be finding a bit of form now. But Garnacho is just young. He plays with that freedom that he doesn't really feel the repercussions of, like, if I lose the ball here, we could lose a goal and we could lose. He doesn't play with that. He's not bogged down yet. So I would play him in this final because I do. Newcastle's defence is really, really good. They don't concede an awful lot of goals. So I do think United will have to go mobile. I don't think Weghorst is the one to go with. Look, if you want to bring him on and affect it in a different way, if I get the mobile lads up front, if they can't break them down with runs into the channels, playing up through the towards, if they can't get any joy, then bring Weghorst on and go a little bit more direct and go a little bit more physical, go second balls, no problem. But I would go mobile from the start, given how good Newcastle's defence is.
You mentioned there, Keith, it's tough coming on. You'd always prefer to start. What is the toughest aspect of it? Is it getting to the pace of the game and your experiences as a professional, or is it more, because I always thought you take advantage of players that are tiring around you, but is it trying to get up to that speed so quickly that's the most difficult element?
Yeah, well, the most difficult thing is trying to get up to speed. That's obviously the big one. You haven't really touched the ball. You go out and jog up and down the line, you do a few stretches, but you haven't touched the ball for an hour, 75 minutes, however long you're sitting on the bench. So your touch is not as sharp as it is. And all of a sudden the ball gets fired into you on a wet patch. And let's not forget, have a look at when some of the lads are warming up. It's literally just like a bog patch. There's a bit of grass there maybe, but you go onto a pitch that's slick, it's dry, it's really, really difficult to come up the pace. And the feel of the game can be in a different way as well. When you start the game, it's a neutral one. You're not sure what's about to start. You can force the pace of it yourself. But when you come on, Newcastle could be 1-0 up. United could be 1-0 up. There could be totally different feels to it. And yeah, it can be, you're coming in fresh. The team could be a little bit depleted. It can be, it's horses for courses. But I think if you ask any player, they want to start because the tempo is so to get up to.
I think, though, from United's perspective, what they're doing is trying to physically wear teams out with Weghorst. Like, you could see him back. He got booked when he was back making a bad tackle. Did he even get booked? I'm not sure. In the first half, like being an extra defender. And there's an element of that like is protection, and also you just go out there and brutalise them for as long as you possibly can. Now, clearly was working horribly, so they whipped him off at half time. But I don't think Newcastle are going to be as good as Barcelona were. I don't think they're going to have to.
I think Barcelona were particularly impressive.
In that first half, they were pretty good.
It was a really tight first half, but I was very disappointed by Barcelona's attacking threat in the second half.
They were a disaster, yeah. But I was kind of a bit surprised by it. Okay, so you're saying penalties. We think of penalties, and then it's in the lap of the gods.
I think that's a good shout, yeah.
Willie Caballero was the hero for City against Liverpool in the first final, I think, under the Klopp era, and then they lost
Pep, yeah.
And then they lost the UEFA Europa League,
yes.
And then they lost the Champions League, and then eventually they won. So if I was to offer you now like 2.5 years of heartbreak and you ultimately win the Champions League, but there's a lot of heartbreak to go through, would you take it?
Yeah, I don't think Manchester United supporters are hoping for Carabao Cup success necessarily. It's a nice trophy to have. They haven't won a trophy in 60 years, United, so it's great to have a trophy on the board, but I'm far more interested in the overall progression. So to answer your question, yes, I prefer the overall evolution.
There'll be a massive overreaction though if they lose, of course, as you can expect.
Depends on the manner of defeat.
Stevie on YouTube says I'd bring Garnacho on, not start him, and he also says the only thing I fear is Rashford being injured. Newcastle are very solid defensively. Well, let's wait and see what the team use is like. So the other games of the weekend are league games: Bournemouth versus Manchester City, Crystal Palace versus Liverpool, and Tottenham versus Chelsea. Manchester City is an interesting case in point here. This one is the 5:30 kickoff on Sky Sports. I never felt confident in them during the week when it was 1-0 away from home and they not making the subs. It's just Pep is like just in his own head a little bit at the moment, Keith.
Yeah, he tends to do that, doesn't he? He tends to overthink things at time. And yeah, so when they went 1-0 up against Leipzig, there was usually you'd expect them they'll kick on now, this would be 2 or 3, or they could even put it out of sight for the second leg, but it was just sort of easy-ozy. They didn't seem to have the bit between their teeth, like they wanted to go for the jugular. And then Leipzig are a good team, and we all know that you wouldn't be at this stage of the Champions League if you weren't. And they obviously went and got the equaliser. There's just so many red flags coming up. Look, far be it from me to to talk about Pep Guardiola's tactics, but making no subs during the week, which you would think he's going to make an awful lot this weekend. But over the last 2 games, he played Bernardo Silva left back, and Bernardo Silva is one of the best attacking midfielders in the Premier League, right wingers, creative midfielder, whatever you want to call him. He's very, very good at that, at controlling the tempo of the midfield and making things happen in the final third. You can't just pop him in left back because he's a clever player. It doesn't work like that. Not at the highest level. You might get away with it in Sunday League. He's a good player. So
but Keith, if you're like the greatest genius in the history of football, you can do whatever you want because no one's ever going to stop you. And that's what Pep has been told his whole life. Yeah,
he can do that. But the one thing I have a big gripe, if it was injuries or he didn't have players and he was filling holes, I'd say fair enough. But he's just let João Cancelo go out the door to Bayern Munich on loan.
Mad.
This is what I don't understand.
It's absolute madness.
If it was any other manager, he'd be getting scrutinised. And look, I believe there was a war of words between them on the training ground and Pep put his foot down. I understand that. I'm not sure how bad it went to that extent. But for me, if a player's that, he's one of the best wing backs in the world. You have to put up with a certain amount of slack from one of the best wing backs in the world.
But you were on this. You were on this last week. You've seen some bad stuff happen, like headbutts and bleeding and all sorts on training grounds. It'd need to be pretty bad for Pep to huff so badly that he's going to send off this guy. And like all the chances they've conceded recently have come down that wing. You're like, if only they had somebody who could like sniff out the danger with his wisdom and then also step into midfield when he's needed. Oh, but he's playing for Bayern now. That was a great move, Pep. Good man.
He must have been real disruptive, lads. Well, we don't know.
We know what Roy Keane said to the assistant manager, Carlos Queiroz. I mean, that wasn't enough to get Roy Keane. It was only when he went mad on telly that they eventually got rid of him.
He was building up his case at that point, but he was easily distinguished with because he was no longer as great as he once was. Cancelo, in his peak, has been shafted.
To Keith's point, though, I don't know if this made the highlights or not, if everybody was watching this during the week, but there was a shot that went over the crossbar from Grealish. But the shot was created when there was just this unbelievable bit of Maradona-esque centre of gravity from Silva, where he got bundled over in the penalty area, bounces straight back up and pings the pass across the penalty area, and then it's like it would have been a beautiful goal from Grealish if it had happened. But if he's playing further up the pitch, he can do that all the time. Whereas if you've got him at left back, he's like, I'm a little bit tired now, Pep. And then Pep's bringing them over and telling them what to do, and then Pep has them on the field like Phil Brown at the end, like humiliating them. This is all a bit weird, isn't it?
You have to remember as well that there was rumours of Bernardo Silva leaving Manchester City in the summer to go to Barcelona, and he wasn't very quick in coming out. He done some interviews about it, and he wasn't exactly squashing it, saying, and even Pep Guardiola was saying, well, I'm not sure what's going to happen. And look, I understand when you're trying to have a club and you want players that want to be here, you want players that want to play your way, but when you have individual brilliance and individual genius like that, you have to, don't sacrifice your tactics, but you've got to put up with a little bit of slack here and there. Like you look at when we go back to the Sean Dyche, the Kieran Trippier and Ross Wallace headbutt. If Ross hadn't have been as talented a player as he was, he'd have been out the door. It was because he was a talented boy that Sean Dyche was willing to put up with it and mend the holes and make things better. I think, I don't know what Cancelo did. If he was totally out of order, then I'd put my hands up and say, yeah, you've got to discipline him. But how bad could it have been?
Come here, Keith. Is it a problem that 36 minutes were on the clock in Germany and Erling Haaland had touched the ball a grand total of 2 times? Or does it actually matter because he's already scored 32 goals this season for Manchester City?
Yeah, well, it's only a problem if he doesn't score, He will only touch the ball a couple of times. So certain strikers, we all love Harry Kane. He'll drop deep, he'll make things happen and he'll score goals. Erling Haaland's not really that type of boy. He can drop deep, he can get it and he can run from deep in behind. But for me, when you look at the clips of the earlier on in the season when De Bruyne was getting it, when Cancelo was getting it, they were looking for Haaland in behind straight away. He was 4 or 5 yards off the 2 centre-halves and he's still winning the foot race in behind, like the goal against West Ham. But they just stopped playing that ball all of a sudden. And I know teams at stages have been very, very deep and that ball is not there. But it has been the last couple of games, there is space in behind and they're just not as eager to play it anymore. And look, I think City need to adapt to Erling Haaland and Erling Haaland needs to adapt to City a little bit. But while the numbers are like they are, it's very, very hard to throw a lot of criticism on it because the numbers are unbelievable.
These are the definitions of absolutely first world problems. A reminder, the football kick-off with Sky, all the football you love in one place across Sky Sports, BT Sport and Premier Sports. We're nearly out of time, so we'll do this pretty quickly. Crystal Palace versus Liverpool. If Liverpool can bounce back from what happened midweek and win this game on the road, under lights, on a Saturday night with a bit of pressure on them, then there's a good chance they'll be okay, and certainly they'll still be in the hunt for top 4, Keith. Is that fair? Is that as far as I'm willing to go?
Yeah, well, look, they're in the hunt, but their season now, after being beaten 5-2 by Real Madrid, their season now is literally a race to try and get into a European competition because they're not competing for the league, they're not competing for any cups. It's just, Jamie Carragher, I think, was right. I listened to the stuff he was saying is, we're seeing an awful lot of stuff. We're seeing mistake after mistake. We're seeing naive tactic after naive tactic, but we seem like we don't want to talk about it because it's Klopp and he's eating so much credit, which he is, and rightfully so, but it's been poor for a long time now and it's gone stale. A lot of the back four, when you look at the back four that played against Newcastle, I know he won the game, but there's only Van Dijk that wants to defend. If you do a session and it's a defending session, the only one that'll be smiling is Virgil van Dijk because he enjoys the defending. Robertson wants to be up the pitch, Alexander-Arnold wants to be up the pitch, and people just have worked it out now that Liverpool are top heavy. When they have possession, they're top heavy and they stand on the halfway line. So when you win it, a little clip over the top, a race in behind,
ping it. And
the recovery runs aren't what they are. They've come way off the boil. But Palace haven't been great. I know it's sort of coincided with Zaha being injured as well. Zaha has a huge part of what they do. But Palace's performances have been decent over the last couple of weeks. They haven't got the points on the board that they should have. So look, I think that'll be a tough game for Liverpool, and I can see maybe a draw in that one.
Okay, and then finally for now, Spurs and Chelsea. Obviously, this is a big game. We saw the earlier game this season when Tuchel was going a bit crazy, and we kind of expected that. This is interesting, and it was the end, and I don't know what the hell this game means. But it's massive. If Chelsea lose again, and if they get duffed up. Very hard for Potter to say, well, it's my, the problem is integrating all these players. That's not my fault. It's like, well, come on now, you can't be saying that.
Potter has won 10 points from the last 9 Premier League games since the World Cup, but yet they have a higher XG than the vast majority of their opposition per game. He had the same problem at Brighton. He's never had a goal-scoring striker, in fairness, Potter, but they can't seem to score goals. They create loads of chances. Are Potter and Chelsea a mismatch, Keith?
I don't think so. I do think that Potter can be the right man for Chelsea. He desperately needs a centre forward. You pointed out the XG there. Look, first thing that pops into my head is Aubameyang's in the club. Why not? I know he's not the answer, but he's the best answer they have right now. So why not throw him in? And that again, I think, is a personal reason. I know he left Arsenal for bad reasons. I think maybe that's creeped in as well. Graham Potter's trying to stamp his foot at Chelsea. He's trying to establish himself as the boss, and he doesn't want players in that are not 100% committed to the cause. So they need a centre forward in the building. They brought some great talent in. Enzo Fernandez, I'm loving watching him. Some of the Chelsea play has been lovely. It's been great to watch, but like you said, they haven't got anybody to hit the back of the net, and that's the hardest part of football. Every time I watch Chelsea, I come away thinking they're a bit nice, aren't they? They're just a bit nice. Yeah. You don't feel like anybody's going to go in on the Monday morning and dig people out and go, you are awful, you need to look yourself in the mirror. It just feels a bit nicey for me at Chelsea at the minute.
All right, give us your predictions for Spurs and Chelsea.
It's all leaning towards Chelsea, but I think Spurs will grind it out. I think they'll just grind it out somehow.
All right, any thoughts on that quickly?
2-0 Spurs.
All right, and that might be the end. But of course, Lukaku could always come back, but he doesn't want to because they've really screwed up that relationship so spectacularly that he's got no interest in it. But he might be the final piece of the jigsaw, I believe, as he was referred to the first time around when he couldn't score. Right, that is this week's episode of the Football Kickoff with Sky. My thanks to Keith Treacy, my thanks to Colm Boohig. We'll be back next Friday at 11:30 across all of Off the Ball social channels. You can leave a comment there, or of course you can hear us on Friday evening on Off the Ball on News Talk as well. Take care.
The Football Kickoff
with Sky. Watch every single live Premier League game on Sky Sports, BT Sport and Premier Sports.